Good morning, Faith Community. In October of 2005, I was reading an article in World Magazine, and a Baptist reporter was interviewing a Chinese Christian. He was part of the underground church movement in China. And the reporter asked him how the church in America could be praying for our Chinese brothers and sisters. And the believer's answer surprised him. The Chinese believer replied, "Stop praying for our persecution to end." The reporter was taken aback and he said, "Stop praying for your persecution to end? Why?" And the Chinese believer explained that all of the church growth had come through the persecution they received. And then he shocked the reporter when he said, "And as a matter of fact, we're praying for persecution in the church in America." Have you ever thought about the blessing of persecution? Maybe over the last few months you have, as some of our basic rights have been taken away from us. Now, I want to encourage you to receive the blessing intended from a time of famine in our church gathering. I shared with you yesterday that we're commanded to gather together. And that word for gather together means the complete collection. All the saints are meant to be there together, encouraging each other, watching out for one another. We talked about watching out for each other yesterday. But here's one of the problems. I think that sometimes we look at the ways that we're mistreated and we get angry for the wrong reason. There's for sure persecution that's been directed at the church in our state. We've been singled out. We've had freedoms denied to us that we should have. But we need to make sure that we're getting angry for the right reasons. What I mean is this. Let's not get angry because we don't get to go to church. We maybe get angry because we don't get to go to the gym anymore. We maybe get angry because we have to work from home, or our kids have to stay home and we have to school them at home. And the anger that we have over having the right to assemble should be different. And here's why. Because the reason we assemble is to watch out for each other so we can provoke one another to love and good works. The reason that we should be angry and have righteous anger over this is because we're being denied the right to consider one another in order to stir each other up to love and good works. So the question I want to ask you today is your anger righteous? Are you longing to be together with fellow believers so that you can provoke them to love and good works? Or are you just angry because something you like has been taken away from you? Being angry over the church not being able to gather together fully is not the same kind of anger we experience over the gym being closed. It's different. Our longing, our heart's desire needs to be that we can gather so that we can provoke one another to love and good works. This is the purpose of watching out for one another. So, what helps us to redeem these times? What helps us as we come back together to actually do what we're supposed to do when we assemble together? We need to keep our eyes focused on the purpose of assembling together. And we need to think about, what are the obstacles? Why don't I, as I look at my brothers and sisters in Christ, why don't I provoke them to love and good works? Really, I think the thing that keeps me back the most often from provoking my brothers and sisters to love and good works is I'm worried about hurting people's egos. I'm worried about their pride. You know, I shared with you a few weeks ago about love. Love believes all things. If I'm believing all things about my brothers and sisters in Christ, I'm not going to be worried about their ego, because I'm going to recognize that they have Christ inside of them. I'm going to realize they'll receive my provocation to love and good works. And if they don't, what have I lost? Well, that's the other thing that keeps me back. I might lose face. I might look bad. I have to die to myself. Sometimes the reason that we don't do what we're supposed to is we're afraid of how it's going to make us look. We need to overcome these obstacles in order to provoke one another to love and good works. Well, how do we do that? How do we provoke one another to love and good works? Well, let me tell you how we don't do it. Don't go to your brother or sister in Christ and say, you really should be loving people more. That's not going to help. The letter kills. What is it that gives life? The Spirit. And so what you need to do is you need to speak life into them with your words. And the way you do that is by reminding them, in Christ, you do love your neighbor. In Christ, you do love God. You don't say you should be loving God. You remind them that they do in Christ. That's who they are in Christ. We do the same thing with good works. We don't go to our brother or sister in Christ and say, what are the good works you've been doing? You better do more good works. Instead, we speak life into them. We remind them that in Christ, God is working in you both to will and to do his good pleasure. You want to do what God desires you to do when you're working out your salvation with fear and trembling. Why? Because God is in you. Because God is working inside of you. Speak life into your brother and sister. Desire to gather together for the right reason. And guess what? You can start today. You can start today with a phone call. You can start today with a visit. You can start today with a trip to the park and a walk with your friend, with your brother or sister in Christ. Provoke one another to love and good works. Speak life to each other. Thank you so much for listening.